Contemporary art is the art of today. It comes in a variety of forms and media. It can be brilliant, but also baffling. And sometimes it's even hard to know whether it really is art. You're someone who likes art and wants to know more, but there's a problem. You don't know your old media from your new. You wouldn't know a biennale from a triennale, and you're simply mystified by notions. Well, help is here. Welcome back to the A to Z of contemporary art, a bluffer's guide to everything you need to know about the contemporary art world. Let's review what we learned in part one. Contemporary art is the art of today, but it's also a type of art that has a history that stretches back through the last century to the beginnings of the modern world. It takes up the ideas and theories of philosophy and science and attempts to apply them to art. Contemporary art is said to be critical of society, and that it has a bigger role to play than just looking beautiful, which is another of its roles, but it's one that is sometimes forgotten. Contemporary art is generic, but it's always evolving into new forms. And that's because these days artists struggle against the idea that they only do one thing, like painting or sculpture, instead of doing many things. Artists are simply people who make art. Contemporary art is a category of art making that stands in contrast to traditional art and philosophies. It's sometimes contradictory and conservative, but other times it's genuinely new. And that pretty much brings us up to date. L is for like. We live in an age when we are constantly asked to like or dislike things based on our immediate reactions and our consumer preferences. And people like to say whether they think something is good or bad. That's all fine, but understanding and appreciating art is about a lot more than just saying you like it. In my own experience, things that have taken a while to get into have given me the biggest reward for the effort. Some types of contemporary art are obscure, a little difficult, or may even appear ugly. But given the effort, you might even end up liking it. The key is to spend time with the work and discover what it is you like about it, or not. And if you agree with everything I've just said, please press like. L is for laughter, as in a joke, that is, a subject for contemporary art. Some might say that contemporary art itself is a joke, as in, it's not serious, not real, the emperor's new clothes and all that. But as we can see here in Kate Mitchell's performance video, I Am Not a Joke, the workings of the classic visual gag can be a serious business. Just like a classic cartoon, even a joke has implications for the real world. M is for modernism. Okay, let's take a quick quiz. Which of the following artworks are examples of contemporary art? Is it A, this toilet, B, this white-on-white square, C, this pile of bricks, or D, this glass of water on a glass shelf? If you answered E, none of the above, then you're correct. These are all examples of modernism in art. They're examples of artists testing the limits of materials, the limits of representation, and probably the limits of most people's patience. The modern era began in about 1850 and ended sometime in the 1970s. It was fun while it lasted, but it's been over for a while now. M is also for market. Art is sold through the art market, and the art market is divided into two. On the one hand, there's the primary market, where galleries sell brand new art for top dollar. And on the other hand is the secondary market, where auction houses and dealers sell pre-loved and pre-owned art, which can be picked up sometimes for a bargain, but which is very often sold for millions of dollars.
Picture of plot number 7, the iconic Australian image by Brett Whiteley. Straight around the video at 1,650, at 1,650, 1750.
Contemporary art makes headlines when it's sold for huge amounts of money. But it'd be wrong to think that just because a work of art sells for millions of dollars, that it also means it's better or more important than art worth a lot less.
Sold $2,400,000. They go to, and of course, a record for Brett Whiteley.
Monetary value is decided by an art object's desirability. If everyone wants it, prices go up. If no one wants it, it's virtually free. People tend to get suspicious when art is sold for tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. The distance between what it literally is, paint on canvas, a photograph, a piece of melted steel, and what it's sold for puts into stark relief the conflicted nature of the cultural value of art. Some claim that the art market today has been the downfall of contemporary art, that bad art gets sold for way more than it's really worth, while others argue that every artist has the right to sell their work in the market.
40,000 it is.
M is for materiality. One of the most widely used and misunderstood concepts in contemporary art is the term materiality. In this video work called Moving Shit Around, 3 artists experiment with the materials used to make art, substituting junk and their bodies for marble or steel or bronze and all the traditional stuff that'd go into making a sculpture. It seems strange in a way that what the artists are doing here looks more like play than making art. And that's because we have a completely irrational view of what is serious material for making art and what isn't. Materiality simply means the state or quality of being material. It can also be used to refer to physical substance or matter. Either way, the nature of being material is a huge philosophical question. Can we actually prove that we exist? Materiality is often used to refer to the qualities of the material used in an artwork, like paint, paper stock or marble, but materiality might also refer to harder to define things like look of video. Artists have often used the term materiality to simply mean the materials they've used. And while this is technically correct, they very often do not mean they are exploring the quality of the materials being, rather they've just chucked it out there and it looks good. N is for notions. Notions is probably one of the most widely abused terms in the contemporary art lexicon. So when an artist says,
"This work questions notions of..."
what they really mean is they are questioning a conception of or belief about something, rather than the other definition of notion in that they are making an artwork that has only a vague awareness or understanding of the nature of something. Being able to tell the difference between the two is crucial to determining whether a work of contemporary art is good or bad. O is for other. The other is one of those curly art world ideas inherited from philosophy and psychology. When it's said that an artist's work is about the other, what is usually meant is that the subject of the work is about depicting a contrast between the artist's subjectivity and an often imaginary sense of otherness. But what does that mean exactly? If we can imagine the exact opposite of ourselves in race, class, sex, language, or even species, something opposite yet related to us, then can we really speak for this other? Aren't we just aligning ourselves with an idea of this other thing as a way of making a statement about ourselves? Well, yes, and this is the whole point. The other can't speak for itself, and so we speak for the other, and the other becomes us. The most startling sense of otherness that occurs in contemporary art are in those works that produce a sense of the uncanny. The uncanny is that unsettling and almost irrational sense of dread found in the unhomely, the strange, the alien. In these paintings by Tony Lloyd, the artist evokes the uncanny in a collage of visual elements that don't quite sit together, and that gives the pictures their palpable sense of eeriness. This is the true other, and contemporary art at its best. P is for photography. Although many people consider photography to be a new form, it dates back to the beginning of the 19th century. The earliest known photograph dates from around 1826, and in the more than 180 or so years since, the thing we call photography has changed. From the plate camera and the daguerreotype to the digital camera and the online image. In the late 1980s, it started to become much cheaper to produce large-scale colour prints, and photographer artists began to make ever larger prints, which got editioned and sold, making them collectible and a potential investment. Indeed, in the era of post-modernity, photography became the centre of contemporary art practice, knocking painting off its perch as the king of all art forms. The work of this generation of predominantly female artists took photography into the realm of contemporary art. Their work is marked by a critical engagement with what photography can do and what it can be. There's often a sly knowingness to the work, an acknowledgement that the artist is aware we are looking. Photography, the most reflexive of all mediums, is now fully self-aware. The world is full of photographic images, and what better way of dealing with it than making a whole lot more of them? Contemporary artists scrutinise the photographic image for every conceivable flaw, bias and potential. The more strict approaches of the past 20 years have given way to a variety of styles, from reportage to Photoshop masterpieces, from street photography to formal portraiture, to the informal world of the mobile phone happy snap. We now live in an age of extreme phonotony, the ennui that's brought about by an excess of photographic images. And yet, despite this, we still like a nice photo. Smile, please. Lovely. P is for postmodernism, which is different from the postmodern and postmodernity. Postmodern is a period from roughly 1970 to sometime in the 1990s, and postmodernity is what the experts call the condition of the contemporary. Now, postmodernism is essentially the theories of post-structuralism, which argue that... Sorry, guys, come back. Look, let's just say that postmodernism is both a period and a style. The style is marked by the use of appropriation, quotation, irony and pastiche. Male artists of the period used to wear suits to openings a lot more than they do today, and feminists used to wear red lipstick and black skirts. You can go back to the pussycat now. Q is for queer theory. Queer theory is the same as regular theory, only bent. Queer theory challenges the heteronormative values of society and looks fabulous while doing it. is for representation. For most people, art is about representing the world, filtered through an artist's imagination. The real world goes in here, swirls around in here, and ends up out there, again in an artwork. When we ask, how accurate is this representation? Or, what effects does history and culture have on the output? Or whether the brain plays tricks on the whole process, we begin to realise that the nature of representation is uncertain. And it becomes apparent that the old styles and forms of art may not be able to answer these questions. Contemporary artists are drawn to new forms because they offer new ways to explore these age-old questions. S is for serious flaw. How can contemporary art have a critical dialogue with the world when it's inseparable from it? Isn't contemporary art, with all its provocative ideas and themes, utterly compromised by the fact that it's supported at every level by government, by corporations and other commercial interests that would buy it drinks, take it out to dinner and flatter it at every turn? This is what many consider to be contemporary art's serious flaw. And yet the answer might be that contemporary art is trying to work its way out of the corporate embrace, to connect with the important issues, to challenge preconceptions and the good old dominant paradigm, and to do it with wit and beauty and charm. Will it work? Artists, critics, academics and the general public are yet to answer these questions. T is for theory. But which theory? Contemporary art is usually based on some sort of critical theory, and critical theory is defined as a philosophical approach to culture which seeks to confront the social, historical and ideological forces which produce and constrain it. Currently, the top 10 of theories influencing contemporary art include phenomenology, post-structuralism, post-colonialism, neo-Marxism and feminism. Any one or all of these may be encountered by the layperson, especially in the dreaded catalogue essay, at artist talks or in art journals. But do you really need to know the theory to get the art? Well, here's a tip. If a work of art needs an essay to justify its existence, then it's probably not working. Unless, of course, the work of art is an essay, in which case, maybe. U is for urban art, an all-purpose term used to explain the exotic found in the familiar. The most prominent example of urban art is street art, which is a term that encapsulates a wide range of practices, including stencils, posters, graffiti, paste-ups, yarn bombing, and any other quick, effective and often illegal means for an artist to communicate an image to the often hapless passerby. Street art is a combination of guerrilla art and political agitation by would-be anonymous outsiders, who invariably end up being educated, middle-class white kids with a knack for publicity. Most street art ends up on walls and gets removed, painted over or washed away. And although most of it is intended to be ephemeral, some street art has ended up in galleries, museums and auction rooms, or preserved by local councils who recognise a tourist attraction when they see one. Another kind of urban art is urban Aboriginal art, which is a somewhat controversial designation as it separates Aboriginal artists who make contemporary art from the parallel world of Indigenous artists who live in regional and remote communities around Australia. Urban Aboriginal art very often takes on the subject of Aboriginality itself and its expression within contemporary Australian society. Is there any need for this separation of artists from one another, either by the location of their work or their racial, social or cultural affiliations? Not really, but it does make it easier to classify art by type. and to assign a monetary value to the work, which helps collectors decide whether it's worth buying. V is for video art. Just like photography, the thing we call video art is in fact a whole range of technologies. From portable black and white video cameras to digital SLRs, from plastic Pixel Vision toy cameras to iMovie and Final Cut Pro, to DVDs, Blu-rays and Mac Minis. As new technologies have appeared, the possibilities of capturing images and presenting them in galleries, on television or online, have expanded exponentially. The arrival of new technologies allows artists more creative options. Early Australian video works like these exploded the visual image into a rainbow hue of feedback, such as in Stephen Jones' Homage to Nam June Paik, or in artfully arranged animations like this work, Night's High Noon by Peter Callis. Their descendants are artists like Daniel Crooks, whose videos stretch time and space into visually stunning configurations. Or John Tonkin, who creates mesmerising loops like this one of never-ending paper, forever falling.
1,622, 1,943, 1,044.
As cameras became digital and miniaturised, they could be used to capture performances anywhere, such as in the work of Sean Gladwell, who creates dances for camera and street performers on skateboards or in trains. Or as in this work by Sue Healy, in the streets of Japan. Last decade, video art was the new big thing, although at that point it was already 40 years old, as loads of artists asked whether it was possible to make video art using little more than a mobile phone and a Mac. And artists said, yeah, sure, why not, and have been attempting to prove that they can ever since. Video art also had an unholy marriage to performance art, and for a while there it seemed that beautiful young artists staring into a camera or putting themselves through hell was the way of the future. Here's a video work by Nina Ross, a great example of contemporary performance video art. It's as far from theatre or the movies as one could imagine. It's all about putting the process on screen. Classic, simple, pure.
You wanna play. You wanna play.
And this is Heath Franco's video, Your Door, another kind of video performance art. It's about the artist's alter egos letting rip in a suburban house on the outer fringes of the city. It's the monster from the id in the plain light of day. Franco's performance can only exist as a video, as he uses the technology of editing, green screen and sound design to make art.
You wanna play. You wanna play.
Video art has also proven very popular with Biennale curators because it's cheap and easy to pop a DVD into the post, and all you need to show it is an HD projector and a white wall, of which the contemporary art world seems to have heaps of both. W is for women, who are most of the art students and who make most of the art, but who usually account for fewer than half the artists typically represented by commercial art galleries. Yet women are more often than not commercial gallery directors, most of the arts bureaucrats and nearly all of the agents. Odd, isn't it? And W is for wine, on which the art world is run, the perfect accompaniment to the thrill of the best art. Cheers. X is for X, the unknown. And that strange, unaccountable thing that makes some contemporary art great, and which captures the time spirit like a butterfly on your fingers. And Y is for you, the one who has all the power in the art-audience relationship. This work is about so-and-so. Oh, really? Says who? You're the one with your newfound knowledge and discernment who gets to judge, to admire, and maybe even buy. And finally, Z is for zeitgeist, which contemporary art is great at capturing, just like pop music. But like pop music, it gets quickly passed over for the next big thing. The art of the present moment always seems the most ephemeral, the most uncertain, and the least tested. If we were to simply rely on what is known and accepted, then there would be no more art, just mere decoration that flatters our tastes and our prejudices. To accept and even love contemporary art, as I do, you need to retain your critical faculties, understand a little bit of history, a little bit of theory, and keep your mind open to the possibilities of what's next. And if you can do all of those things, then you've learned everything there is to know about contemporary art.
Next week at 10, follow the transformation of Robin Beach, a London high fashion photographer turned documenter of Indian culture and NGO chief. Robin Beach, a life exposed.